February the 9th, 2019. I'm Keith Warr, and welcome to another episode of Homeless in Titusville. And today I am bringing you guys a little bit of a different video. Usually I am showing you the people that are on the side of homelessness and addiction and other things. And today I'm bringing you guys a story of a woman who's been there and come back from that. And what is your name, ma'am?
Liberty Crouch Taylor.
Liberty Crouch Taylor. So it used to be just Crouch.
Correct.
Until November 30th.
That's right.
And
yeah.
Then you married Willie Taylor.
Sure.
Right. The one and only famous Willie Taylor from Titusville. The Fighting Edge fame, people may know him. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you grow up? Were your parents married, divorced?
So I grew up in a single parent home. My dad raised my brother, sister, and I, and we did that until I was 12 years old.
And where were you living up until you're 12?
We were actually brought up here in Titusville.
In Titusville.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what happened after you were 12?
At 12 years old, I started rebelling really bad against my dad and against anyone in authority. And my dad ended up putting me in a children's psychiatric center because I was being so rebellious and out of control. That's when they first started me on medication. They put me on medication and sent me home. That didn't last too long, and soon I was back at that same center at age 13, and that's when the deeper hurt of why I was rebelling started to manifest and really come out of why I was rebelling so bad.
Did that feel like love when that was done to you? Or were you hateful towards your dad? Were you like,
yeah.
I can't believe you did this to me?
Yeah, I was mad at the world. I hated everybody. I was very, very mean. I hated everybody. But when I was at the psychiatric center for children, I started to open up to the therapists that were there, and I had stuffed the hurt of being molested at an early childhood. I stuffed it so deep that I had forgotten all about it until I was 13 talking with the counselors.
Well, I don't want you to reveal any names.
Sure.
I certainly don't want to do that. But was the person who did this to you, was it a family member or a friend, neighbor? Like, who did this to you?
Trusted babysitters.
Trusted
plural.
babysitters. Oh, so more than one.
Yeah.
Males, females?
Males.
Oh, okay.
And so that was a root issue of the rebellion that I started acting out when I was 12, 13 years old. So finally, but instead of actually addressing the root issue any further, they sent me home. My dad never spoke about the issue, and instead it was just finger pointing, blame shifting type of stuff, and my healing never took place. I never got healed from the wounds that caused me to start rebelling at such a young age.
So you didn't have a psychiatric diagnosis? This was all just from the abuse?
Correct.
Okay.
And so I started because I was still hurting and I wasn't even able to talk to anybody else about it, or talk any further about the things. So, a lot of drug addicts, a lot of people who become alcoholics or have such hard addictions, hard to shake, there's a deeper rooted issue.
Right.
And for me, that's where it stemmed from. I started smoking cigarettes at 12 years old, and
well, did you have brothers and sisters? Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had an older brother. I still do. I have an older brother and a younger sister.
Did any of this abuse happen to them too?
My sister and I at the same time, both times.
And did she kind of act out the same way that you did?
She did, but she stood closer to home. I was always one to run. I always wanted to run. I didn't know how to face my feelings, so I'd always run or trying to find a way of escape.
So even though the same thing happened to both of you from the babysitters, you were locked up and took it this way,
right.
And your dad didn't have to lock her up.
Correct.
Okay. She didn't act out as much.
So that's basically at age 12 years old, smoking cigarettes.
Where'd the cigarettes come from?
My dad. I stole them right in front of his face, and
we got the love bugs.
Yeah.
So you stole them from your dad.
Yeah.
That's how you started.
and started smoking cigarettes at 12, becoming sexually active at 12, running away.
When you say sexually active at 12, what are we talking about here? Like, are we talking full-blown sex?
Sex.
At 12?
At 12. I was, if you think about it, my virginity was taken.
With who? With another 12-year-old? With
Yeah, kids my age.
Really? Wow. That's...
And so yeah, so now I'm, acting out this way. But the addictions of men and cigarettes only grew to another level, which became smoking pot, drinking, craving the attention of others. So pot led to alcohol. Then we have cocaine. It just got stronger in the addictions and more and more and more.
So, like, by what age were you into pot? At what age?
13.
And what age were you into cocaine?
18.
18. Okay. And that was all here in Titusville?
Here in Titusville. Yeah.
Were you hanging out with, as they say, the wrong crowd in school, or?
Yeah, I was the wrong crowd.
You were?
I was the wrong crowd.
You were, yeah.
And I was the leader of the wrong crowd.
Oh.
So, of men, you know what I mean? I'm not going to point my finger and say, oh,
Right.
I hung out with her. No, it was my choice. I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And so I oftentimes wanted to not be at school. I didn't find any groups that attracted me. So I just basically, myself and other outcasts hung out together. And
you said at 15 that you became pregnant, and and you had your first child at 16. How old was the father when you were 15? Was he an adult? Was he a teenager like you?
So I did get pregnant at 15, but backing it up, my dad ended up kicking me out of the house at age 13. So now I was homeless at age 13, staying with friends, unable to finish high school because my dad wouldn't sign for me to continue going to high school, and he wouldn't let me back at home. So I was homeless, didn't finish high school at 13, living with friends. And and sleeping around with men, drinking, doing whatever I wanted at age 13 because I had no adult supervision or anyone to really put down any boundaries. So I got pregnant at 15 by an older man, at least almost 10 years older than me.
Okay. So he was an adult. I mean, he was an adult, full. He wasn't like 17 or 18 or 19. He was.
No. He actually, in this case, for my with my older son, this case. I believe that this person actually preyed on the younger, weaker people, and I happen to be, one of those targets.
Did you just have one child with him?
One child with him. He was very abusive. I was abused physically, mentally in this relationship. I ended up having. I left with my son at 3 months old because he almost tried to kill me. But the Lord made a way for me to escape, and so there, I'm a mom at 16 now, just going through that crazy abusive relationship.
And you didn't marry him?
Never married him. And then by the time, and still living with friends, and by the time I was 16, I got another boyfriend, which was my other two children's dad, and that's who ended up raising my older son and the other two kids. So I'm a mom of 3 by the time I'm 21. Yeah.
And the second guy is the one who pretty much raised all 3 of them?
Yes.
So he seems to me like a pretty decent guy.
Yeah.
So you kind of lucked out,
Yeah, he was a blessing. He was a blessing, and especially to the kids. For me, I stayed in that relationship for 13 years. And even in that relationship of him not being faithful to me and me not being faithful to him and me getting caught up in drug addiction again, working at the strip clubs, becoming an adult entertainer from the time I'm 18 years old to the time I'm 30 years old, hooked on drugs, lost my kids, lost everything.
Where were you in adult entertainment at?
Brevard County, everywhere in Florida and North Carolina.
So these were like
Yeah.
topless bars. They were
Yes.
full nudity. But then I know a lot of stuff goes on. Then they negotiate some kind of sex, you know, on the dance floor, and then they go out in the parking lots and things go on.
Yeah,
You know,
things. I've seen a lot. It definitely does happen.
So was that a pretty big drug scene, the strip joints?
Huge, huge. And it's so in your face that it's almost as if that's the way it is in the strip clubs. So I basically I kind of made a vow to myself that I was not going to bring the drugs home. I was just going to keep it at work and do drugs and go home. But it escalated and it was out of control to the point where the drugs did make it home in my house. And at that point, it became unmanageable. I completely was just working for the attention that I wasn't getting at home, the money to, again, buy the drugs, and that I was addicted to. And this was ongoing every day,
Did you ever have any
every
arrests?
day.
Did you ever get any trouble with law enforcement?
No. Well, I can't say no. Domestic violence when I was
But you never
17
got arrested.
and 19.
You never got arrested for the drugs. Like you
No,
never
no.
had any kind of
Nope.
court-ordered,
No.
you know, rehab.
No,
or this,
thank God.
All that kind of stuff.
No.
And were your man at the time? Were you guys married?
No, we weren't married.
You
We
weren't
never
married.
got married.
So where was he when you were going through this drug scene? Was he doing the drugs along with
No,
you?
he wasn't there. He never did any drugs. He basically stayed. He was always working, and he helped take care of the kids. And I can't say that he was Mr. Innocent because he wasn't.
Right.
You know, a lot of the actions that when he stepped outside of our relationship, triggered emotions in me to make me want to stay gone. And
So you were acting
yeah.
out just like you did when you were a teenager.
Sure. Yes.
And that same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then how did that relationship come to an end with him?
Basically, after he had 3 other kids outside of our relationship, I decided it was enough. I didn't want to do it anymore. My daughter was about 2 years old, and I decided I want to move. So I packed up my vehicle and my daughter, left the boys until I could come back and get them with their dad. I went to North Carolina, where my dad lives, and I moved in with him for a while, ended up getting my own place, brought my kids up there. And I was off of drugs, you know, for a time.
So you had a period of time of sobriety, and then you went back to it.
When I was not working at the clubs, I was not on drugs. When I was at the clubs working, I was on drugs. And then when I finally had moved up to North Carolina, I was not working in the clubs, but I became so depressed with hopelessness and not knowing who I was and not knowing what to do with myself. I became an alcoholic for 4 strong months and tried to kill myself several times. It was a hard time, but it was is what I needed to, all of these things, all of these circumstances, I tell you, because it led up to who I am today. You know, the drug addictions, the alcoholism, the money, the men, the abuse, just a hard life from forever until I was 30 plus, really.
And you see like this thing like I had real recently with Valerie, you know, and the whole
Right.
thing kind of fell apart and so on. And you know, I talked to you and filled you in on all the details and things. Do you think there's anything that I may have done on my end or anyone else that may have sabotaged this? Like, do you think I'm to blame for this at all, or do you, like, how do you see it? Because you know, you've lived it. You're on her side.
Right. So a lot, and in lieu of that, I want to say that a lot of many people, even people close to me, people I didn't know, strangers, a lot of people tried to help me, and those were good seeds. And it didn't like it, but it wasn't time for me to change. It was time. I could only get the change if I wanted it, and I wasn't ready. Even sometimes I thought I was ready, I really wasn't ready. So with you and that situation, that's a completely different case, of course, but my thoughts are this. I believe the Lord uses you, Keith, and those are good seeds that you're like that connector, the conduit that connects the people with the people to get them help. And you did your part, and everybody else has done their part. But in the long run, it's essentially it's up to the person. Do they want the help?
Right.
And
Regardless of what anyone around
Yeah.
them does,
Correct.
they're going to have it in their mind that
Right.
they're either for helping themselves or they're not. I mean,
Correct.
is that pretty much how you
That's
see it?
That's it. Valerie, along with everybody else who's out on drugs, alcohol, or any other addiction that would keep you from having a fulfilling life, I would just say that if they're not ready, don't stop sowing good seed. Don't stop loving them. Don't stop caring for them. Don't not help anybody else because you got offended. Don't do that, because there are people that still need help.
Can't impose your will on somebody else.
You cannot oppose your will on somebody else, because then it becomes your expectation for a person's future that maybe that's not in the cards for them at that time.
Right. So even though you put all this time, effort, money, and so on and so forth,
right.
That's neither here nor there if they're not ready, if this isn't
Right.
their time to do it.
Right. And so if you have money and you have time and you have goods and talents and services that you want to help somebody, let it be unconditional.
Right.
It should have no condition attached to it, or keep it, because, then it would be not for good.
Right.
Yeah.
This stuff has been hard for me because, and I have kind of learned to not be so emotionally invested.
It's hard.
Because I was at the beginning, and then when I was let down, when things didn't work out the way I thought they should have worked out, or the effort I put, into them, you're right. Then I had this expectation and let down, and I was upset with them, upset with myself. But I mean, in the end, it is their choice. It has to be within them. And
right.
like, how did you get to that point? Like, what was it in your life that got you to that point?
Well, basically, in the year 2010, I hit a rock bottom. At the point of, in 2010, I was not doing just cocaine or smoking crack anymore. I was shooting methamphetamines in my veins every day, all day long. And I was barely 90 pounds. I hadn't talked to any family in years, and people didn't know if I was dead or alive.
That stuff's expensive, though. Where were you coming
expensive.
up with the money?
Were
you stealing? Were you
stealing, lying? And the man I was dating, and he was a drug dealer, so that's what he had access to it, and so. The relationship I was in was basically tied to the drugs, and it was hard. But when 2010 came, 4th of July, no doubt, I hit a hard rock bottom. We ran out of drugs, we ran out of money, we were almost out of gas, and we had a plan and we had no more friends, nobody that would front us some dope or anything. We had nothing,
right.
And we had a plan to go camp out at the river. Because at least over by the river, we could have a place to lay our head
right.
in the car, right? And so that's what our plan was. Well, we got on the highway, and before we knew it, we were yelling at each other and everything, and just strung out. And we were yelling at each other. The car,
were the kids in the car when
No,
this was going on?
the kids had already been taken from me.
Oh, by the state?
Yes, thank God. Yes, and that's good.
Yeah.
So no, it was just me, and and my boyfriend at the time, and we're driving on the highway, and intending to go to the river and camp out, but we ended up going on the highway towards my dad's house, who lived nearby, and he pulled over at the end, some exit off the highway, which it happened to be where my dad lives, on that exit, and I hadn't talked to my dad in years. And I knew it was my dad's exit. And this boyfriend was abusive. And he pulled over, snatched me out of the car, began to, we just began to fight. He was on top of me, trying to strangle me. And his foot slipped on some grass. And I got away from him, and I was running down the road. And my dad lives down there. And I knew if I had to just run all the way to his house, that's what I was going to do. And in the meantime, I'm running down the road, and in the mountains, there's like nobody around to hear me. So I'm like, help me, help me. And finally, a van comes off the highway down the road, a white van, and he sees me in the middle of the road, and I'm flagging him down, and he stops. And I say, and it just so happens to be a pastor, right? You know, pastors pray.
Yeah, yeah.
So before I ever got in the car, you better believe he was praying. Like, I mean, I looked like death. I literally looked pretty bad. I looked pretty bad, like barely 90 pounds, all beat up, bloody. Like, who knows what this guy was thinking, this pastor was thinking.
Yeah.
But I'm glad he came because there was nobody else. I believe the Lord sent him to help me. And God does send help. So I got in I said, can you take me up to my dad's house? It's right up the road. He's like, sure, come on in. And so he just listened to me ramble on and drove me straight up to my dad's house up the mountain. When I arrived to my dad's house, 4th of July, 2010, my dad saw me and he was shock and awe. You know, he hadn't seen me, hadn't heard from me. And I said, Dad, can I stay here? And he said, you could stay here, Lib, but I've got plans. It's 4th of July. I'm going to shoot off the firecrackers. And I'm like, okay. And so I did. I stayed there. The pastor left. My dad left. I'm all alone. And I never even made it inside the house yet. Everybody's gone, you know?
Yeah.
I had nothing. I dropped to my knees, and I didn't know the Lord yet. I didn't know him. But I dropped to my knees, and if you can imagine, I'm like, I had nothing. If anybody has ever had nothing, that's the point of rock bottom I was at. And I dropped to my knees, and I'm like, God, if you're real, you've got to help me. Please help me. And I'm on my knees crying out for this God who I didn't know to help me. And I don't know how long I was out there crying. I finally made it inside the house, and I slept for a few days. And then when I woke up, my dad was there making breakfast. And that was the most peace I ever had. And I got to talk to my dad for a while and wake up to him cooking his breakfast. And his face when he saw me was just like when I was a little girl, and he was, you know, the daddy that I needed to come home to. The same dad that kicked me out, the same dad that turned his back on me. The Lord brought me to his house for my recovery. I didn't go to hospitals or recovery centers. I didn't do all of that. I got my recovery separated on top of a mountain in North Carolina for over a year.
Wow.
Separated from friends, everything. Separated from everything.
Well, hey, rehab facilities have not always existed.
Yeah.
You know, and people have had to, you know, find their recovery somehow, some way. You know, what's your relationship like with your dad today?
Very special. I love my dad. I love my dad. We talk every single day, and you know, our relationship is stronger than it's ever been.
Did you tell him how bad things were?
Yeah.
So you told him about that life you were living?
Yeah. In detail. My dad and I have cried many tears. In fact, I was during the first week of my coming off of all this methamphetamines, there's delusions I was having, and just seeing things and hearing things. And I had went outside, and he lives on like 8.5 acres of land, and so there's a whole bunch of trees. And I said, Dad, they're out there, they're gonna get me. And he said, show me where they are, and I'll cut the trees down. So he brought, and he's out there with me in my mess, trying to meet me where I am because he loves me. And that's unconditional.
Yeah.
That's an unconditional type of way that you meet somebody where they are, and you don't expect anything in return.
Right.
Just trying to lead them to hope. Just trying to lead them to the truth. Just trying to lead them out to safety, something, but don't expect anything in return.
Where's your relationship with your kids today?
Today, it's been reconciled. I have a great, strong relationship, I can say, with each one of my 3 kids. My oldest son is 23, and then I've got a 20-year-old son and a 17-year-old daughter, and each one of us, we have a special bond, and it's just getting stronger every day. And I believe it's because of I let my walk speak for itself. I don't, for a long time they couldn't trust me. I abandoned them. Not once, but many times. How could they trust me, And so I broke a huge trust bond with my kids for a long time.
So were they raised to age 18 with the state?
No. Their the kid's dad, the one that raised that raised all the kids, he raised them.
So he got them from the state at a point.
The state never had them. When the state was called on me, I had a choice. And I said, okay, well, let me call their dad. It was either their dad or foster care.
Oh, gotcha.
And I called their dad. Their dad took them, and so, basically.
And they're healthy and happy today.
Oh, yeah.
Things are good there. And do your kids live here in Titusville now?
Yes, my older one. He stayed in North Carolina though.
Well, tell me about what your life is like today. What are you doing now? Do you go out and talk to women that were in your position and try to, mentor them, or what kind of things are you doing in your life? It's okay.
Actually, I don't go and find anybody. The coolest thing about walking now free and delivered from all desire for addictions, for drugs, delivered from all desire of it, is that, and plus being saved and rescued from abusive situations, and being in many hard situations, I can have empathy towards people who are in those situations. I don't find anybody a lot of time. It's like a magnet. Those things come to me.
Right.
And the people come to me, and I just let them talk, and I hear their heart, and then I just share however the Lord leads for me to share with them, to give them some type of hope.
And now you've got a great partner in life. You have Willie Taylor.
Yes.
And you're pretty active in his gym, in his fight group. Fighting
Right.
Edge. So tell me what that experience is like. Are you a fan of the boxing and the MMA, or do you have a love for what he's doing? How do you feel about what he's doing and how he's going about it?
Well, first of all, I married my best friend. I love him so much. That alone is a redemption, because I hated all men. I hated. And
But you knew Willie when you were a kid, though, didn't you?
Yeah. And but it, now, having horrible relationships, I appreciate and I know what is good, and I am in the best relationship I've ever been in.
Right.
And as far as Fighting Edge, I saw it as I saw the Lord's army in a way, like He's training up this group of people for something great, and that's what I saw when I first met him. Again, reconnected with him.
Right.
I saw that, and I think it's awesome to be a part of such a movement towards something greater, and
to mentor young people, so they don't have to go through the kind of stuff that you went through when you were younger.
Yeah.
And I know as part of your recovery, you wrote some books.
Correct.
So can I?
Sure.
What's the first book that you wrote here?
Okay. So, Demons Release Trilogies. This is actually a book series of 3, and it's autobiography. And this is book 1, and it's basically my before Christ story. Before I met the Lord, all the crazy delusional times, the abuse, all the bad, rough and raw stuff is in book 1, because first of all, these writings were just in my journal. I didn't have anybody else to talk to or tell my problems to or tell what was truly on my heart. So I wrote them all down in my journals. And that's where the writings come from in these books. Book 1 is the before Christ, raw stuff, and book 2
This is what book 2 looks like.
Yeah, is the transformation of how, of Christ in me. The whole transformation from.
And you share your story in more detail here. How can we get a hold of the book if we want it? Where can we buy it?
You can go search in Amazon. It's available on Amazon.com. Demons Release Trilogies, and you know, and you'll find it. You can get it on Kindle if you like to read it digitally. If you like to read it softback, it's available. Also, if you are around in Brevard County, you can stop by the Brevard County Library in Titusville. They're available. You could just check them out.
That's awesome. Yeah, because you donated some copies of it yourself so that
Right.
you could, you know, help other people through these books.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
I think this is really great stuff, you know, and it's really nice to see somebody who was at the same place that people like Valerie and Tanya
Yeah.
were at, and now, you know, like to see you, that there is hope that they can be where you're at. They can get to this place.
They can, and I would just say to anyone who has a loved one, friend, family, someone who is close to their heart that you really want to help, but you just don't know how. The thing of it is that recovery has to be their decision. If recovery is all your thought patterns, all your decision, it's just what you want for them, but they don't want it for themselves, then it's not time. And if you believe in the Lord, pray to the Lord and ask the Lord to heal them and to deliver them and set them apart for His glory. Start there. If you don't believe in the Lord, well then I suggest that first of all that you do. That's just my thoughts.
Right.
Because I know where my help comes from.
Right.
But other than that, if you want to help people, I just would say, you know, be kind, non-judgmental, and remember that people who are either on drugs or just getting off of drugs are super sensitive. They're hypersensitive, and so you have to take these thoughts into consideration because they don't think like you and I being stable-minded.
Right.
Everything is hypersensitive, so just keep that in mind when you're trying to help them.
All right. Well, we spent a while with you, and I really appreciate you sharing your story. And you guys can connect with Liberty. She is on Facebook. I think she's a member of the Homeless in Titusville Facebook page. You guys can reach out to me at KEITHWOHR on Facebook. You guys can send me private messages, friend requests. Also, I look at the comments and things on YouTube. I do have to approve them. So if you put a comment up and you say, I don't see it, it's because, you know, some people don't know how to have civil discourse. And, you know, I try not to say, look, even when somebody doesn't agree with me, most of the time I put it up. But anyways, may you guys just be just as blessed as you have blessed others. And what do they say at the Fighting Edge?
Oh, in life, don't